ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरून् श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधा कान्त नमोऽस्तुते तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Hare Krishna. So we will continue from where we left this, the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, shloka number 20 onwards. So we are in the section where Krishna is talking about the difference between the body and soul. It's a very important section. The first instruction of the Supreme Lord Krishna for all the living entities. Right? So text 20. न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचिन् नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः अजो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे. For the soul there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. So, this is in all possible ways, in all possible tense, in all possible times. No, it is mentioned that the soul is always existing and it is unborn. It is not created at a certain point in time. So, it doesn't get destroyed at also at a certain point in time. It's always there. So, but the body, no, it changes or it ceases to exist at a certain point in time. Okay, purport. Qualitatively, the small atomic fragmental part of Supreme Spirit is one with the Supreme. He undergoes no changes like the body. Sometimes the soul is called steady or kutastha. The body is subjected to 6 kinds of transformation. It takes its birth from the womb of the mother's body, remains for some time, grows, produces some effects, gradually dwindles, and at last vanishes into oblivion. The soul, however, does not go through such changes. The soul is not born, but because he takes on a material body, the body takes its birth. The soul does not take birth there, and soul does not die. Anything which has birth also has death. So that means anything which has a creation also should be destroyed. So, but soul is not created at a certain point in time. And because the soul has no birth, he therefore has no past, present, or future. He is eternal, ever existing, and primeval. That is, there is no trace in history of his coming into being. Under the impression of the body, we seek the history of birth, etc., of the soul. The soul does not at any time become old as the body does. So here, at this point, many times people ask, like, God is a creator of everything. So then the next question that comes is, who created God, right? So this is because of our limited understanding or our exposure to things which are created and destroyed. So God doesn't need to be created like that. No, God is always existing, and in the same way, we ourselves, the souls, also all are always existing. It is never created and never destroyed. Okay, the so-called old man therefore feels himself to be in the same spirit as in his childhood or youth. The changes of the body do not affect the soul. The soul does not deteriorate like a tree nor anything material. The soul has no byproducts either. The byproducts of the body, namely children, are also different individual souls, and owing to the body, they appear as children of a particular man. So here's nice point. So we as souls cannot produce children. No, all souls are children of God, and no, somehow or other, some soul is becoming a children of us. So then we think that, oh, this is my child and things like that. But actually, in actual sense, it is all children of God. So in the drama of this material world, somebody may become our child, somebody may become our relative, and things like that. But in actuality, everyone is related to the Supreme Lord only, and they are all children of God. And it's only out of illusion we consider, oh, this is my child and this is my relative and things like that. Actual sense, everybody is related to Krishna, and forgetting that relation, we are all suffering in this material world. So if we can actually bring about that relation again, so then it is very nice. Like that is a perfect relationship that we can have. Okay, the body develops because of the soul's presence, but the soul has neither offshoots nor change. Therefore, the soul is free from the six changes of the body. In the Katha Upanishad, we also find a similar passage which reads, Na jayate mridyate va vipaschin, nayam kutaschin na babuva kaschit. Ajo nitya shashvatoyam purano na hanyate hanyamane sharire. It's almost very, very similar to this sloka that we are reading today. So this Katha Upanishad also has a similar sloka. The meaning and purport of this verse is same as in the Bhagavad Gita, but here in this verse, there is one special word, vipaschit, which means learned or with knowledge. The soul is full of knowledge or full always with consciousness. Therefore, consciousness is the symptom of the soul. Even if one does not find the soul within the heart where he is situated, one can still understand the presence of the soul simply by the presence of consciousness. So we have this understanding that Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hridesha Arjuna Tishtati. So the Lord, the super soul, actually resides in the heart, and also the soul is also present in the region of heart. So, but then many times people do open heart surgery and things like that. So why do they not find soul over there? No, because the soul is not a material element. We cannot see with our naked eyes. No, for that matter, when somebody passes away, we don't see the soul leaving the body. No, it is because it is in a different realm altogether or different dimension altogether. So which is not perceivable by our material senses. No, how can we see spirit with our material eyes? It is not possible. So, and because of that, we'll not be able to see. But then we can understand by the display of consciousness. So from head to toe, everywhere we have the consciousness, and the consciousness is the symptom of soul. Now, if consciousness is there, then it is the symptom of soul. Okay, sometimes we do not find the sun in the sky owing to the clouds or for some other reason, but the light of the sun is always there, and we are convinced that it is therefore daytime. As soon as there is a little light in the sky early in the morning, we can understand that the sun is there in the sky. Similarly, since there is some consciousness in all bodies, whether man or animal, we can understand the presence of soul. This consciousness of the soul is, however, different from the consciousness of the Supreme, because the Supreme consciousness is all knowledge, past, present, and future. The consciousness of the individual soul is prone to be forgetful. When he is forgetful of his real nature, he obtains education and enlightenment from superior lessons of Krishna, but Krishna is not like the forgetful soul. If so, Krishna's teachings of Bhagavad Gita would be useless. So this point even Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita also, like in the 4th chapter. So Arjuna is asking, like, how come you know all these things? You were also born means at the same time when I was born. And you are telling that you have told this knowledge to Vivaswan, sun god, and things like that. I have not had an experience of this. So, no, what are you saying about all these things? So then Krishna says, then, yeah, like both of us have taken many, many births, many, many avatars. But then, because you are a living entity, you forgot everything. No, I am Supreme Lord, so I don't forget, no, these things. So Supreme Lord never forgets. So we, the living entities, have the tendency to forget things, but the Lord never forgets anything. No, He's all knowledge. Okay, so there are two kinds of souls, namely the minute particle soul, that is Anu Atma, and the super soul, that is Vibhu Atma. This is also confirmed in Kata Upanishad 1 to 20 in this way. Uh, Anoraniyan Mahato Mahiyan Atmasya Jantor Nihito Guhayam Tam Akruthu Pashyati Vitashoko Dhatu Prasadan Mahimanam Atmanah. So both the super soul, Paramatma, and the atomic soul, Jivatma, are situated on the same tree of the body within the same heart of the living being. And only one who has become free from all material desires, as well as lamentations, can see the grace of the Supreme Supreme, understand the glories of the soul. So here we see that this point is mentioned that both the super soul and the individual soul are present in the region of heart, and they are in the same body. No, they are present in the same body. But okay, so we can say that through our material senses, we'll not be able to see the Lord. But then the soul is there, and the super soul is there right next to the soul. Why not we see the super soul? So the point here is that we have to become liberated. What is this liberation all about? So liberation means to be free from all material desires and lamentation. So that is no Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma na shoshati na kamshati. So one is freed from all hankerings and lamentation. So this is a sign of liberation. No, if I'm hankering for something material, if I'm lamenting for some loss of something material, then I am not liberated. I am still bound, by the stringent ropes of the material nature, and I will not be able to see with clarity. So now the soul is there; it is covered by this, material covering, and when I become free from lamentation and desire, so then I am liberated. So then I can see the super soul. I can see everything spiritual. No, everything is possible. No, at that point in time. So that's the liberation. That's the point of this one that we are trying to progress towards. So liberation also means if I should not have material desires and material hankerings, so then I can actually have spiritual desires and spiritual hankerings. No, that will kind of put us in a different plane altogether. So in that way, like I will stop having any material desires and material hankerings. So in that way, like that is the point of liberation, and only in the liberated state we can actually see the soul, the super soul, and everything. So till the time we get liberated, we cannot even see ourselves. It is not possible to even see ourselves. So why it is not possible to see ourselves? Because no, it is like if there is no sun is there, there is no light is there. So then we cannot see ourselves. No, we are there. No, somebody can say, okay, you are there anyways. Like you can see yourself, but it is not possible because of the absence of sun. No, I cannot even see myself. So when the sun comes, I can see the sun, I can see the world, I can see myself. Everything is clear. So in the same way, now when this hankering and like lamentation is gone, and when I'm able to see the super soul clearly, and at that point only I can able to see myself also. No, if I'm not able to see Krishna, then I'm not able to see myself also. No, seeing oneself means to come to the point of Krishna consciousness. Okay. So Krishna is the fountainhead of the super soul also, and it will be disclosed in the following chapters as Arjuna is the atomic soul, forgetful of his real nature. Therefore, he requires to be enlightened by Krishna or by his bona fide representative, the spiritual master. So we can see that Arjuna is an eternal associate of Krishna. Always he accompanies Krishna in his various leelas. And even to such a person, this knowledge have to be given. So at any point in time, how much ever advanced we are, how much ever great we are, always we require guidance. Always we should keep ourselves under the shelter of some bona fide representatives of the Supreme Lord. So that is a very important principle that we can learn from here. So Krishna can be independent. He is always independent. So we are dependent entities, and we should always seek shelter at the lotus feet of some representative of Supreme Lord and some bona fide spiritual master. Otherwise, we will not be able to understand Krishna. So it is very, very important to be under the shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. Okay, text 21. Veda vinashinam nityam yayenam ajamavyayam katam sapurusha partha kam gayanti hantikam. O Partha, how can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible, eternal, unborn, and immutable kill anyone or cause anyone to kill? So Arjuna was lamenting that how can I kill all these relatives? And Krishna is giving a technical analysis and he's saying, how can you ever kill anybody? No, you cannot kill anyone because the soul cannot be killed. You can only destroy the body. So, but no, you cannot stop anyone from living. No, they will live in another body. No, they will continue to exist. Okay. Purport. Everything has its proper utility, and a man who is situated in complete knowledge knows how and where to apply a thing for its proper utility. Similarly, violence also has its utility, and how to apply violence rests with the person in knowledge. Although the justice of the peace awards capital punishment to a person condemned for murder, the justice of the peace cannot be blamed because he orders violence to another person according to the code of justice. So here, this is also one very important thing. So sometimes people say that why there is violence and why, even in law there is violence that is there. So there is capital punishments. That means like this terminal punishments like Fasi Chadana and things like that. So why such kind of punishments are there? So, but it is required. It is necessary to maintain peace. There is a element of violence is necessary. Just like for maintaining a good health, there is a level of operation or like the medical practitioners, they do operation. Operation means what? Cutting open the body. So somebody may say, this is also violence. No, how can you cut open somebody's body? So, but for peace, some level of violence is necessary, right? And it is based on the code of justice. It is not based on anybody's whims. It is based on the law, that has been done. So, and here Srila Prabhupada is giving about Manu Samhita. Let's read that. In Manu Samhita, the law book for mankind, it is supported that a murderer should be condemned to death so that in his next life, he will not have to suffer for the great sin he has committed. So if a murderer is not given capital punishment, if he is not killed also, so then in the next life, he has to reap the result or sin of whatever he has committed. So that's why if the punishments are offered, it is very good. So then the problem is solved then and there. No, the person can start a new life in the next term. Otherwise, in the next term, in the next life also, he has to suffer for all the previous sins that has been committed. So that's why the kings and the rulers who used to give punishments to the wrongdoers, they are actually merciful on them. They are actually finishing off their karma then and there so that they can start off a new life. No, otherwise escaping from punishment, it's not going to solve the problem. Later on, I have to face the problem in a different way, right? Okay. Therefore, the king's punishment of hanging a murderer is actually beneficial. Similarly, when Krishna orders fighting, it must be concluded that violence is for supreme justice, and thus Arjuna should follow the instruction, knowing well that such violence committed in the act of fighting for Krishna is not violence at all, because at any rate, the man, or rather the soul, cannot be killed. So for the administration of justice, so-called violence is permitted. A surgical operation is not meant to kill the patient, but to cure him. Therefore, the fighting to be executed by Arjuna at the instruction of Krishna is with full knowledge, so there is no possibility of sinful reaction. Okay. There is a question. You're saying soul, super soul, both same? No, both are not same. The soul means we, and the super soul means the Paramatma or the Supreme Lord. So the soul and the super soul are different. No, they are not same. They can never be same. Okay, text 22. Vashamshi jirnani yata vihaya navani grinati naroparani tata sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehi. A person puts on new garments, giving up old ones. The soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. Purport. Change of body by the atomic individual soul is an accepted fact. Even the modern scientists who do not believe in the existence of soul, but at the same time cannot explain the source of energy from the heart, have to accept continuous change of body, which appears from childhood to boyhood, and from boyhood to youth, and again from youth to old age. Um, from old age, the change is transferred to another body. Uh, this has already been explained in the previous verse, that is 2.13, right? So here Prabhupada is mentioning, the sloka is talking about just like we change our clothes every day, or when the clothes become old, like we stop using those clothes. And in the same way, the material body is also given up, just like an old cloth is thrown away. In the same way, this material body is also given up. So we will continue to exist in future lives. No, we will not. We as a soul will never get what is that? Never die, right? So that is the point that is mentioned here. And here, Srila Prabhupada is mentioning that even material scientists, so they may say about, they may not believe in soul and stuffs like that and all, but then how will they explain that the heart is pumping so much of energy? The heart is working and heart is pumping so much of energy. How is it possible, that the heart is able to generate so much of energy? And that is where the soul and the super soul is present. And that is why the energy is getting pumped from there. And another point, no, Srila Prabhupada is mentioning is, if we consider ourselves to be this body is changing at every moment. So then how can we say that we are the body? No, we are changing at every moment, and still we have the same identity. So with these points, we can actually very clearly say that no, we are different from this body, and the energy is pumping from the heart. So that means no, there is some energy that is sitting in the heart, right? So it is non-stop, it is pumping, from the time we are born until we die. No, this pumping is going on continuously, and that is because like the soul is present and the super soul is present, and that's where the energy is coming, right? Okay. Transference of the atomic individual soul to another body is made possible by the grace of the super soul. The super soul fulfills the desires of the atomic soul as one friend fulfills the desire of another. The Vedas, like the Mundaka Upanishad, as well as the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, compares the soul and the super soul to two friendly birds sitting on the same tree. One of the birds, the individual atomic soul, is eating the fruit of the tree, and another bird, that is Krishna, is simply watching his friend. Right. So even in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna mentions that he says that Upadrishta Anumanta Bharta Bhokta Manishina. So like he says that Upadrishta, Upadrishta means one who is overseer, overseer. So Krishna doesn't come and stop us saying that you don't do this, you do this, and things like that. He don't command and he don't stop us from doing a particular action. But then he's an observer. He observes, and this is how the Upanishads also describe. So Krishna is an observer, and we, the individual soul, is trying to eat the fruits of the tree. Right? Okay. Of these two birds, although they are the same in quality, one is captivated by the fruits of material tree, while the other is simply witnessing the activities of his friend. Krishna is the witnessing bird, and Arjuna is the eating bird. Although they are friends, one is still the master and another is the servant. Forgetfulness of this relationship, the atomic soul is the cause of one's changing his position from one tree to another, or from one body to another. So this point we will read more thoroughly in the later chapters of Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna mentions that he is not the cause of the problems that we are going through. He is never the cause of the problems that we are going through. He is an observer and he is sanctioner. No, he is observing and sanctioning, and everything is under his control. Nothing is going off his control. Not even a blade of grass can move without his sanction. It's actually not even a blade of grass cannot move without his sanction. It is not that by Lord's plan, but it is by the Lord's sanction. So in the material world, the soul wants to fulfill so much of material desires. He keeps desiring and desiring and desiring, and the Lord keeps sanctioning and sanctioning and sanctioning, based on the karma that he has accumulated. So no, the Lord is like overseer. No, because if nobody oversees, how will anybody know what is the karma that we have? So somebody has to oversee. The Lord is overseeing, and then he is awarding, he is sanctioning. These two functionalities the Lord is doing. So in this way, like the Lord is aloof from all the material things. He is not attracted to the material things, and he is not even coming and stopping the living entity from engaged in material things, right? So he is just as an observer and sanctioner. That's the role that the Lord is actually playing here. Sometimes people say like, no, why don't you come to the temple? And they'll say like, no, when the Lord's desire is there, we will come. So it is Lord's desire is there. So Lord is doing this role in the material world. He is just being a witness and sanctioner. No, he's not going to come and say that, oh, like, no, you have to come to my temple, worship me, and things like that and all. So he will not come on our way and say that. It's only the devotees of the Lord who will come on our way and say that. And that's the role of a devotee. And the Lord, due to his promise he has given to the living entities, that I will satisfy whatever you want. No, and the living entity has told, I don't want to listen to you. Simply, you listen to me. No, you listen to me. In fact, we were having a discussion with some devotees, and they were telling that no, they were telling about their relatives. They keep changing different gods. No, whenever they are not, their prayers are not answered, so then they keep changing the different gods. Like, this god is not listening to my prayers. Maybe some other god I should look for. So it's like, whole point is, Lord should listen to me. No, Lord should listen to me, and he should just follow my orders. No, whatever I'm asking for, he should just keep fulfilling those things, and that's the job of the Lord, right? And that's what is for all their desires, material desires. People say, Lord should listen to me. And for spiritual things, going to the temple or taking on some serious spiritual practices and things like that, oh, whenever the Lord desires, it will happen. Bhagwan ka jab ichha hogi, like, no, sab kuch ho jayegi. So that is like complete, what do you say, like opposite, or no, taking the chance, taking the best or the worst possible options, to juggle with. So why not we reverse this whole thing? No, the Krishna conscious devotees, actually they do the exact reverse of the same thing. So they say that when what is that? For going to the temple and for serving and things like that, they say, "Oh, I am a servant of the Lord. I must do all these things." And in terms of expectation of some material things, they say, "No, whenever the Lord's desire is there, it will come." No, any material facility, any material things, a devotee will say, "Whenever the Lord's desire is there, it will come." And if the Lord's desire is not there, it will not come. So I don't mind about that. My job is, I am a servant of the Lord, and I must engage in service of the Lord. So the materialist will speak exactly the opposite language. So they will say like, material things, oh, kyun Bhagavan sunne rahe? Like, why the Lord is not listening to me? No, Lord's job is to listen to me. Why he is not listening to me? And no, when it comes to the point of practice spiritual practices and things like that, they'll say, okay, whenever the Lord's desire is there, it will happen, right? So this is the complete irony of thought process between the devotees and the non-devotees, right? Okay, so now we see here that Arjuna and Krishna are like they're representing the two birds which are sitting on the tree, and the Lord is the master all the time. Though he's also a soul, but then he's a super soul. He's really amazing personality, and Arjuna is an atomic soul, and he's trying to like explore the fruits of this tree, right? Okay, so now, so when the subordinate bird, it actually listens to Krishna. So when Arjuna listens to Krishna, all his lamentation is gone. So in fact, in the end of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna will say, Nashto moham smritir labdva. So I, all my moh, all my lamentation and illusion, everything is finished. And now I've got proper intelligence. No, that's the effect of listening to Bhagavad Gita. If somebody listens to Bhagavad Gita properly, so then he will also be there in the similar kind of a condition wherein he will say, okay, now I've all the illusion is gone now, and now I'm able to think clearly, and all my like lamentations and the problems and everything is solved, right? So that's how it is seen. Okay, both the Mundaka Upanishad and Svetashvatara Upanishad confirms this. Samane vrikshe purusho nimagno anish अनीशया सोचति मुह्यमानः जुष्टं यदा पश्यति अन्यमीशम् अश्य महिमानम् इति वीतशोकः. Although the two birds are in the same tree, the eating bird is fully engrossed with anxiety and moroseness as the enjoyer of the fruits of the tree. But if in some way or other he turns his face to his friend, the Lord, and knows his glories, at once the suffering bird becomes free from all anxieties. So very amazing sloka, right? So it very, very graphically presents the whole thing. So what does this fruits represent? The fruits represents the material happiness and distress. No, there are varieties of fruits in this material world. No, like katta, tikka, and no sweet and everything. No, all kind of different tastes are there. And this bird keeps on tasting all these various fruits, and it is in so much of suffering. And it is somehow or other, if this eating bird turns towards this observer bird, that is the Supreme Lord, and takes shelter of him, so then immediately all the anxieties is finished. Okay. Arjuna has now turned his face towards his eternal friend Krishna and is understanding the Bhagavad Gita from him. And thus, hearing from Krishna, he can understand the supreme glories of the Lord and be free from lamentation. Arjuna is advised here by the Lord not to lament for bodily change of his old grandfather and his teacher. He should rather be happy to kill their bodies in the righteous fight, so that they may be cleansed at once of all reactions from various bodily activities. So here the point to be noted is they have to be here. He should rather be happy to kill their bodies in a righteous fight. It is not an just like that. We cannot just go and say, no, some old people are there in my home. What's the point in maintaining them? No, better, no, get rid of them. So that's not the point. That's not the way it is mentioned here. Here, the duty of a Kshatriya has to be performed, and his duty now is to establish dharma. And whoever is there in the opposite side, the adharmic side, they have to be finished, and that's the order of Krishna. And the duty has to be performed, and he should not budge from his duty. So, in performing the duty, one should not think that, no, I am killing or I am protecting and things like that. So, in a normal scenario, if there are elderly people are there at home, so we take care of them because that is our duty. No, they are not standing on the path of irreligion, and neither we are Kshatriyas, no, to give punishments to anybody, right? So in that way, like we should be very clear that this righteous fight or one's duty. So here the emphasis on one should perform his duty and not be carried away by the externals of the duty, right? So either killing or protecting. So the externals doesn't matter. The most important thing is the duty in itself is what matters. Okay, one who lays down his life on sacrificial altar or in the proper battlefield is at once cleansed of bodily reactions and promoted to a higher status of life. So there was no cause for Arjuna's lamentation, right? So here, if his relatives they give up their body on a dharma yuddha, so then they are going to get higher destination. So in that way, like he should be very happy to execute this particular task. So that's what the purport says. Text 23. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavakah, na chainam kledayantyapo, na shochati marutah. The soul can never be cut to pieces by any weapon, nor burnt by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. Okay, so this is the nature of the soul. The soul cannot be disturbed by anything material. It is spiritual, right? So it cannot be touched by anything material. Purport: all kinds of weapons, swords, flame weapons, rain weapons, tornado weapons, etc., are unable to kill the spirit soul. It appears that there were many kinds of weapons made of earth, water, air, ether, etc., in addition to the modern weapons of fire. Even the nuclear weapons of the modern age are classified as fire weapons, but formerly there were other weapons made of all different types of material elements. Fire weapons were counteracted by water weapons, which are not known to the modern science, nor do modern scientists have knowledge of tornado weapons. Nonetheless, the soul can never be cut to pieces nor annihilated by any number of weapons, regardless of scientific devices. This is a nice enlightening kind of a point where all the material, the Panchabhutas which are there, earth, water, fire, air, ether, no, all of them were used in terms of weapons, right? So all of them were used. And right now we have only fiery weapons. No, we don't have other kinds of weapons. The Mayavadi cannot explain how the individual soul came into existence simply by ignorance and consequently became covered by illusory energy. Nor was it ever possible to cut the individual souls from the original supreme soul. Rather, the individual souls are eternally separated parts of the supreme soul. So this is a very important point. The Mayavadi scholars or the impersonalists, so they say that the living entity and the super soul or the supreme lord is same. And like if that is the case, at what point in time we the living entities came from the supreme lord? So that means the lord had to fall under ignorance, for us to come into this material world. That is like ridiculous kind of a proposition. So Lord can never fall under ignorance. Lord is always beyond ignorance. And if we are such a kind of a part, no, we are one with the Lord. So then how did we, the portion of the Lord, came into ignorance? It is not possible. It is completely not possible. It's a ridiculous proposition, right? So we are always separated parts and parcels of the Lord. So Krishna mentions that aparyayamitastvanyam prakriti viddhime param Jiva Bhuta Mahabahu Edam Daryate Jahat. So, like before that, he says Binna Prakriti. So, he's separated entities. And also, like we, the living entities, are called as Vibhinnamsha. So, the Lord's personal expansions, that is the Vishnu Murti, no, they are called as the Swaamsha. Swaamsha means one's own Amsha. And we, the living entities, are called as Vibhinna Amsha. So, Vibhinna means separated expansions of the Lord. So we can never be equal with the Lord. No, that can never happen, right? Okay. So because they are atomic individual souls, eternally Sanatana, they are prone to be covered by illusory energy, and thus they become separated from the association of the Supreme Lord. Just as the sparks of a fire, although one in quality with the fire, are prone to be extinguished when out of fire. Hmm. So the sparks of the fire, they can show their glowing only if they're in association of the fire. And if the moment they fall on the ground, they become null and void. So in that way, no, till the time we are there with the Supreme Lord, so we are completely spiritual and things like that. The moment we separate ourselves from the Supreme Lord and come to this material atmosphere, we are completely caught up with the material things. No, we'll forget everything that is spiritual. Hmm. Okay. In the Varaha Purana, the living entities are described as separated parts and parcels of the Supreme. They are eternally so, according to the Bhagavad Gita also. So, even after being liberated from illusion, the living entity remains a separate identity, as is evident from the teachings of the Lord to Arjuna. Arjuna became liberated by knowledge received from Krishna, but he never became one with Krishna. So, this important, nice point that is mentioned here, that always we will be separate, even in the liberated state, we will always have our separate identity, and the Lord will have a separate identity. We will never merge in the existence of the Lord. Right? Text 24. Achedyoyam adahyoyam akledyo shosha evacha nitya sarvagatasthano achaloyam sanatanaha. The individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble and can neither burn nor dry. He is everlasting, present everywhere, unchanging, immovable, and eternally the same. Purport. All these qualifications of the atomic soul definitely prove that the individual soul is eternally the atomic particle of the spirit whole, and he remains the same atom eternally without change. Right? The theory of monism, that is, living entity merges in the existence of the Lord, so that is called monism. The theory of monism is very difficult to apply in this case because the individual soul is never expected to become one homogeneously. After liberation from material contamination, the atomic soul may prefer to remain as a spiritual spark in the effulgent rays of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but the intelligent souls enter into the spiritual planets and associate with the Personality of Godhead. So actually, those people who are practicing this impersonal philosophy and they want to merge in the existence of Lord, what happens is mentioned here. So they can become one atom in the Lord's effulgence, no? And they can think that, oh, I have merged in the effulgence, I have merged in the Brahman light and things like that. But actually, they can never merge. No, they always are separate only. And intelligent souls, they don't just stay in the Brahma Jyoti as an atom, they enter into the spiritual planets and they get association of the Supreme Lord, which is very, very blissful, very amazing. Right? Okay, the word Sarvagata, all pervading, is significant because there is no doubt the living entities are all over the God's creation. So Sarvagata means like he's there everywhere. So how can we say like I am in soul? No, am I everywhere? No, I am just sitting in one room and I don't even know what's happening in the another room. So how can the living entity be called as Sarvagata? So here the explanation is given that the living entities are there everywhere. That means every single square inch there is so much of bacteria and viruses and things like that. So there is no place in the entire creation where there is no living entities are there. Every square inch is infested with so much of living entities, right? So that is why they are called Sarvagata. Okay. They live on the land, in the water, in the air, within the earth, and even within fire. The belief that they are sterilized in fire is not acceptable because it is clearly stated here that the soul cannot be burnt by fire. Therefore, there is no doubt that there are living entities also in the sun planet with suitable bodies to live there. If the sun globe is uninhabited, then the word Sarvagata, living everywhere, becomes meaningless. Hmm. So everywhere, practically everywhere in the whole material creation, there are living entities. Okay, text 25. Avyaktoyam achintyoyam avikaryoyam tasmad evam viditvainam nanusochitumarhasi. It is said that the soul is invisible, inconceivable, and immutable. Knowing this, you should not grieve for the body. For what? As described previously, the magnitude of the soul is so small for our material calculation that he cannot be seen even by the most powerful microscope. Therefore, he is invisible. As far as the soul's existence is concerned, no one can establish his existence experimentally beyond the proof of Shruti or Vedic wisdom. We have to accept this truth because there is no other source of understanding the existence of the soul, although it is a fact by perception. So by perception, we have already seen that the soul exists because we have consciousness. That means the soul is there. The symptom, the consciousness means that there is existence of soul. But then if we want to experiment and see and practically pratyaksha praman, we want to see and understand the soul. No, that is not possible. We have only one way, that is to understand this knowledge from the scriptures. And there is no other way we can actually understand this knowledge because we are in the material realm, and to understand spirit, no, we need to get information from the spiritual platform. Materially, how much ever we try, we will never be able to understand the soul because soul is spiritual and our senses are material. Okay, there are many things we have to accept solely on the grounds of superior authority. No one can deny the existence of his father based upon the authority of his mother. There is no source of understanding the identity of the father except by the authority of mother. Similarly, there is no source of understanding the soul except by studying the Vedas. In other words, the soul is inconceivable by human experimental knowledge. So this is a very important point. When a child is born, no, the father and mother united. So that is before the birth of the child, way, way before the birth of the child. And how will the child know who's the father? It's on the authority of the mother, no, that he accepts. And that which has happened before our existence or before our coming into cognizance, so that has to be accepted from an authority who has seen it or who was present at that point in time. And Krishna is a person who is present at every point in time, and he can actually give us the right knowledge. He can actually say what is right, what is wrong, and we can actually accept it in that way. And Krishna is telling that we are spirit souls and we belong to the spiritual world, and we have to purify ourselves and get liberated. Na soshati na kankshati. No, we have to get to that platform. Then we can actually say that there is no then we can actually see things. No, otherwise we have to get knowledge from a higher source, right? Okay. Unlike the bodily, sorry. In other words, the soul is inconceivable by human experimental knowledge. The soul is consciousness and conscious. That also is the statement of the Vedas, and we have to accept that. So, soul is consciousness and this Chetana, and that has to be accepted because it's statement of the Vedas. No, that's the way to perceive the soul. How to see a thing is taught by the superior authorities. Now, for example, sun is a very small disk that we are seeing, but how to see the sun is taught to us by the knowledge that we have acquired. So we know that sun is a huge entity in a far away distant place, and that's why it is appearing to be very small, right? So in that way, that knowledge is necessary to see. So in the same way, if you want to see the soul, we have to consult the Vedas, the superior authorities, and they say that by the presence of consciousness, you can understand that the soul is there. And that's the way of seeing. No, we cannot see it otherwise, right? Okay. Hmm. Unlike the bodily changes, there is no change in the soul. As eternally unchangeable, the soul remains atomic in comparison to the infinite supreme soul. The Lord is called as infinite. No, he's like all encompassing. He's the Vibhu. Everything rests on him. No Param Dhamma, right? So the Lord is called as Param Dhamma. So, but then we are Paramanu. No, we are the most smallest. No Paramanu. No, we are. So, okay, the supreme soul is infinite and the atomic soul is infinitesimal. Therefore, the infinitesimal soul, being unchangeable, can never become equal to the infinite soul or the supreme personality of Godhead. This concept is repeated in the Vedas in different ways just to confirm the stability of the conception of the soul. The repetition of something is necessary in order that we understand the matter thoroughly without error. Okay. We'll try to do quickly another shloka. Atachainam nityajatam nityam va manyase mritam tatapi tvam mahabaho nainam sochidam arhasi. If, however, you think that the soul or the symptoms of life will always be born and die forever, you still have no reason to lament, O mighty armed. So here Krishna is taking the devil's advocate. So he's taking the opposite side. He's telling that even if you think that there is no soul, and all the symptoms of life that we are seeing, they are born and they are killed, they are destroyed. Even then, you don't have any reason to lament. Why there is no reason to lament? Because it is just a bag of chemicals. No, all the relatives that you are lamenting about, they're just bag of chemicals. You're just releasing the chemicals. That's all. There is no real person over there. So it is just the symptoms of the material nature. So just destroy them. So in that way also, like Krishna is coming to the point. And actually, this is the Buddhist philosophy. No, Prabhupada is actually mentioning that in the purport as well. So Buddhist philosophy says that there is no real soul that is existing. Everything that existing is matter, And somehow or other, the matter has come together and the symptoms of life has come. And our whole purpose is to disintegrate, the symptom of life so that we will become shunya. That's why they are called shunyavadis. The Buddhists are called shunyavadis because their concept or their philosophy is shunya, ultimately to become zero, with no existence, right? So anyway, we'll read the purport. There is always a class of philosophers, almost akin to the Buddhists, who do not believe in the separate existence of the soul beyond the body. When Lord Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita, it appears that such philosophers existed and they were known as Lokayatikas and Vaibhashikas. Such philosophers maintain that life symptoms take place at a certain mature condition of material combination. The modern material scientists and materialistic philosophers also think similarly. According to them, the body is a combination of physical elements, and at a certain stage, the life symptoms develops by interaction of physical and chemical elements. The science of anthropology is based on this philosophy. Currently, many pseudo-religions now become fashionable in America are also adhering to this philosophy, as are the nihilistic non-devotional Buddhist sects. So Buddhism is called as non-devotional. They are called non-devotees. Why? Because they are not only saying that there is no supreme Lord, they are saying there is no individual soul also. It's only thing that exists is matter, and that is also a kind of illusory perception. Our whole point is just negate all these things and become zero. No, you don't exist, the Lord don't exist, nothing exists. So now somehow or other some entity is thinking that it is me and it is I'm going through problem. That's the main issue. So somehow or other you destroy your existence. It's actually suicidal philosophy. The Buddhist philosophy is kind of a suicidal philosophy wherein you just have to suicide yourself. That's the point. It drags the person too. So that's why it is called as nihilistic, non-devotional Buddhist sects. So like they deny even the existence of soul. Okay, even if Arjuna did not believe in the existence of the soul, as in the Vaibhashika philosophy, there would still have been no cause for lamentation. No one laments to lose a certain bulk of chemicals and stop discharging his prescribed duties. On the other hand, in modern science, the scientific welfare, so many tons on the other hand, in modern science and scientific welfare, so many tons of chemicals are wasted for achieving victory over enemy. According to the Vaibhashika philosophy, the so-called soul or Atma vanishes along with the deterioration of the body. So in any case, whether Arjuna accepted the Vedic conclusion that there is an atomic soul or he did not believe in the existence of soul, he had no reason to lament. According to this theory, since there are many living entities gathered out of matter every moment, so many of them are being vanquished at every moment. There is no need to grieve for such incidents. If there were no rebirth for the soul, Arjuna had no reason to be afraid of being affected by sinful reactions due to his killing his grandfather and teacher. So Krishna is telling, even if I kill them, no, I'll have to suffer. I'll have to face the consequences. So that means what? So these people are existing, and if I do some harm to them in future lives, I will also get some harm. No, he's calculating all those things. That means there is a conception of soul that is there, over there beyond the body. Okay. But at the same time, Krishna sarcastically addresses Arjuna as Mahabahu, mighty armed, because he at least did not accept, accept the theory of Vaibhashika, which leaves aside the Vedic wisdom. As Kshatriya, Arjuna belongs to the Vedic culture, and it behooved him to continue to follow its principles. So the Vedic, no, he's the Vedic person. So this Vaibhashika philosophy is definitely, they know that it is atheistic, and definitely a person like Arjuna would not subscribe to it. And just Krishna is just giving the wild scenario that is, even if you think that there is no soul existing, still you cannot avoid fighting. No, you have to discharge your duty. Why are you thinking so much about it? You should go ahead. No, that's how Krishna is actually mentioning here. Okay, so We will stop here uh, on an auspicious Ekadashi. It is nice to have all your association and reading this wonderful message from Bhagavad